Good morning from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where flight controllers belonging to the Orbit 1 team are preparing for the arrival of the SpaceX Dragon cargo ship that is scheduled to dock to the International Outpost about 1 hour and 45 minutes from now, following its launch on Thursday from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Good morning and welcome to what amounts to a space doubleheader today. as we kick off with the arrival of the SpaceX Dragon that is carrying some 3 tons of supplies and science experiments to the Expedition 70 crew aboard the International Space Station. Awaiting the arrival of Dragon is Station Commander Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos and his crewmates Nikolai Chub and Alexander Grabenkin of Roscosmos, and NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Laurel O'Hara. Also waiting in the wings, the second launch attempt for the Soyuz MS-25, half a world away at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, with launch scheduled 3 hours and 4 minutes from now at 7:36 a.m. Central Time, 8:36 a.m. Eastern Time, which will be 5:36 p.m. in the Central Asian Desert. We'll be talking more about Soyuz as the morning goes on. We're coming up very shortly, and there's our first view of the SpaceX Dragon, currently at a distance of about 8 kilometers away from the International Space Station. It is preparing to fire its Draco thrusters in a big rendezvous maneuver called the approach initiation burn that will occur at a distance of about 7 kilometers below and behind the International Space Station. That will result in Dragon making a long looping maneuver to a point about 1 kilometer directly below the station, and then moving out in front of the station at a distance of about 220 meters, and then above the station at a distance also of about 220 meters to begin its final approach for contact and capture to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. The path of Dragon from the launch pad to this point prior to docking has been precise, in fact so precise that all the burns are coming up a bit earlier than had been planned. Docking is now scheduled for approximately 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. That would be just 1 hour and 20 minutes before the Soyuz launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The Dragon cargo ship began its journey to the International Space Station on Thursday. Here's a replay of liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket from Pad 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Lifting off into a cloudless sky on a majestic afternoon at the Florida Spaceport, Falcon 9 rose to orbit, arced out to the northeast into an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator, and about 11 minutes after launch, the Dragon itself separated from the second or upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket into its preliminary orbit. The forward nose cap on the Dragon cargo craft was opened to expose the docking mechanism that will come into play a bit later on this morning as it arrives at the Harmony module for its docking to the station. On board the station, astronauts Mike Barrett and Laurel O'Hara will be in the station's cupola, monitoring the approach of Dragon for its docking to the complex, again carrying some 3 tons of supplies and science experiments for the Expedition 70 and 71 crews. Dragon will begin a stay on board the station of about 5 weeks in duration once it departs around the April 25th time frame. A couple of days later, the 8 crew members, Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, and Jeanette Epps, along with Alexander Grabenkin, will board their Crew Dragon vehicle, the SpaceX Dragon that they launched on earlier this month, and will undock from the forward port of the Harmony module and do a brief spin around the block to relocate themselves to the zenith port. That's the port to which the cargo Dragon is going to be docking a bit later, about an hour and 40 minutes from now. Dragon's departure clears that port for the relocation of the Crew 8 Dragon vehicle, in turn opening up the forward port of the Harmony module for the arrival in early May of the Boeing Starliner spacecraft with Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams aboard in the crew flight test of that new commercial crew vehicle. During the final phase of the rendezvous by the Dragon cargo craft this morning, there will be several points. If you can imagine the crosshairs on a target, the vertical line is called the R bar. That's the radial vector, an imaginary line drawn between the International Space Station and the Earth. The horizontal line is called the velocity vector. That's called the V bar. That's the direction of travel in which the station makes its orbit around the Earth. At the crosshairs of that target is the International Space Station. So Dragon, again, will be moving to a point directly below the station on the R bar, or radial vector. Then we'll move out in a long looping maneuver in front of the station and then above the station to a point called Waypoint 1, where all of its systems will be evaluated by the SpaceX flight control team in Hawthorne, California, who are operating in concert with the flight control team here in Houston. And then the terminal phase of the approach inside the keep-out sphere will begin with various checkpoints before Dragon makes contact and capture to that zenith port of the Harmony module. And the approach initiation burn has now begun. This is a brief firing of the Draco thrusters on Dragon. This is the final major maneuver, other than fine course, mid-course correction burns that will be coming up to fine-tune and refine the path of Dragon to the International Space Station. And the burn is complete and good. And the trajectory, all of the GPS equipment on Dragon now targeting a perfect arrival at the International Space Station. All of the burns have gone flawlessly to this point, and Dragon's systems are in excellent shape. Again, the approach initiation burn has just been conducted. No problems. It was a perfect burn. And so Dragon now is on its final trajectory to arrive at a point directly below the station, and then moving out in front of the station, then above the station for contact to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. At this hour, the International Space Station and its 7 crew members are flying 262 miles over the South Atlantic, moving from southwest to northeast in an orbit that will carry it across the southern coast of Africa and up the east coast of Africa on this orbit of the Earth. At the SpaceX Control Center in Hawthorne, California, flight controllers are watching over the progress of Dragon in the overnight hours on this Saturday morning, making sure that all of Dragon's systems are in excellent shape, which they are, as it moves into the final phase of its approach for docking to the station about an hour and 36 minutes from now. Docking is scheduled at 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center, again, the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers on duty. They are led this morning by Flight Director Ronak Dave, who is the lead flight director for this SpaceX resupply mission called CRS, or Commercial Resupply Mission 30, to the International Space Station. He is at the bottom of your screen. To his right is spacecraft communicator David Brenna, who will be talking to the expedition crew aboard the International Space Station as the morning moves along. As Dragon continues its flawless approach to the International Space Station in the Central Asian desert at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, the Soyuz MS-25 crew is about to board the vehicle for the second time in a couple of days. Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitsky, joined by NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya, are ready for their launch attempt coming up at 7:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern Time this morning. This launch attempt today comes 2 days after a last-second abort of the launch on Thursday, in which the countdown reached the T-minus 20-second mark before the ground launch sequencer cut off the countdown due to the detection of low voltage in the electrical system of the Soyuz 2.1A booster's first stage. The engineers down at Baikonur went through a series of troubleshooting procedures, changed out batteries in the Soyuz first stage, retested them, and everything is set to go this morning for a launch to the International Space Station. Unlike Thursday, which would have resulted in a fast-track 2-orbit 3-hour journey from the launch pad to the station, today's launch, the orbital mechanics, is such that it will be a 34-orbit 2-day journey to the station, with the crew in the descent module of the Soyuz capsule for about 48 hours, with docking scheduled at 10:09 a.m. Central Time, 11:09 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday morning. This in turn pushes the departure of NASA astronaut Laurel O'Hara with Novitsky and Vasilevskaya to return to Earth on their Soyuz MS-24 spacecraft. That return to Earth now is targeted for April 6th. And just a note, we will be segueing almost immediately out of our Dragon docking coverage this morning into our launch coverage from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. That will begin right at the top of the hour at 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. So you'll be seeing all of the activity associated with pre-launch events preceding the crew's arrival at the launch pad. That launch coverage again coming up at 8 a.m. Eastern Time on NASA Television and NASA Plus. Dragon's approach to the International Space Station will pass several gate posts, if you will. There's a large elliptical oval-shaped region called the approach ellipsoid that the Dragon cargo craft, the unpiloted cargo craft, will enter a short time from now at a distance of about 1 kilometer below the station. Once inside the approach ellipsoid, integrated operations will be underway between the flight controllers at SpaceX's control center in Hawthorne and the flight control team here in Houston. The inner circle, if you will, which is basically the neighborhood of the International Space Station, if you wish to call it that, is called the keep-out sphere. That's where the Dragon spacecraft will begin the terminal phase of its approach for rendezvous and docking, a slow, glacial, methodical approach that will start about 220 meters above the Harmony module's zenith docking port, all the way into contact and capture. The Dragon cargo craft now about 4 kilometers away from the International Space Station. We're about 16 minutes away from a mid-course burn of the Draco thrusters. Again, this is a very small tweak of the Draco engines that will fine-tune Dragon's path to the International Space Station, all automated. The cargo vehicle, unpiloted, should reach a distance of about 1,000 meters away from the International Space Station some 21 minutes from now. Aboard the International Space Station, which is currently flying over South Africa, NASA astronauts Mike Barrett and Laurel O'Hara will be inside the cupola a short time from now, setting up all of their rendezvous tools and monitoring equipment to keep an eye on the approach of Dragon for its contact and capture to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. Once that is complete, an umbilical will be extended between Dragon and Harmony, and that will be hooked up to provide station power to Dragon for the duration of its 5-week stay at the International Outpost. Once pressure checks and leak checks are conducted at the docking interface between Dragon and the station, the hatch will be opened on the station side of the docking interface, and then the Dragon hatch will be open to about 9-10 o'clock this morning Central Time to allow the station crew on this Saturday to do a bit of heavy lifting as they move precious cargo and science experiments out of Dragon into the station to set up shop for their 5 weeks of scientific research. As we said, we're keeping track on 2 critical activities today. While Dragon is approaching the station for its docking, this photo from Bill Ingalls, NASA chief photographer, who's in Kazakhstan in Baikonur, shows the Soyuz MS-25 crew, Tracy Dyson on the left, Oleg Novitsky, the Soyuz commander, in the center, and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya on the right, as they were prepared to board a bus in front of their cosmonaut hotel crew quarters. A short time ago, they made their way to the suit-up facility in the Baikonur Cosmodrome, suited up in their Sokol launch and entry suits, and then were driven to Pad 6 at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, where they have just pulled up, ready to board their vehicle for final pre-launch preparations. The vehicle currently being fueled for launch at 7:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. Back here in Mission Control in Houston, flight controllers working with their SpaceX counterparts in Hawthorne, California, monitoring the precise path of the Dragon cargo craft for its docking to the International Space Station, all of its systems in good shape. Currently 3.4 kilometers distance between Dragon and the Harmony module of the International Space Station, which is its destination today, closing at a rate of about 3.5 meters per second. The next milestone will be a brief firing of the Draco thrusters in what is called a mid-course correction burn, a fine-tuning burn to refine the Dragon's path to the station. That should be coming up about 11.5 minutes from now. If you're just joining us, we are providing live coverage of the SpaceX Dragon cargo ship's arrival at the International Space Station. Also preparing for our live coverage of the launch of Soyuz MS-25 from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Dragon is currently 3 kilometers away from the station in a phasing coast that will take it to a point called Waypoint Zero inside the approach ellipsoid, a large elliptical or oval-shaped region around the International Space Station. We should be about 30 minutes away from a point at which Dragon would be 400 meters directly below the station along the R-bar, or the radial vector to the Earth, an imaginary line that's drawn between the space station itself and the Earth. And as we track the progress of Dragon to the station, another picture from NASA Chief Photographer Bill Ingalls showing Tracy Dyson, NASA astronaut, about to embark on her 3rd flight into space as she underwent the pressure checks, the leak checks on her SOCA launch and entry suit inside the Building 254 integration facility at the Baikonur Cosmodrome before the crew, which includes Dyson, Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitsky, and spaceflight participant from Belarus, Marina Vasilevskaya, were driven by bus out to the launch pad. The crew has now boarded the Soyuz MS-25, with the countdown now at T-minus 2 hours and 40 minutes until their launch. This is Mission Control Houston. We're in a brief loss of signal through our tracking and data relay satellite system. At this hour, the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft is on a precise path for a docking to the International Space Station about an hour and 18 minutes from now. Docking is scheduled a bit earlier than previously scheduled. The current docking time approximately 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. Everything going by the book so far, with Dragon's approach to the station now at a distance of about 2.3 kilometers away, closing at a rate of about 2.5 meters per second. The next milestone coming up in about 9.5 minutes, that will be a brief firing of the Draco thrusters in a mid-course correction burn to more precisely fine-tune Dragon's path into the approach ellipsoid and then ultimately into the keep-out sphere for a long looping maneuver to a point about 220 meters above the station for its final approach for contact and capture. Dragon, as we mentioned, is carrying some 3 tons of supplies and science experiments to the station. Science, of course, the major objective of activities aboard the International Space Station. Following the launch of the 30th Commercial Resupply mission on Dragon to the station on Thursday, the science experiments and technology demonstrations on their way for arrival at the complex include studies of sea ice thickness, photosynthesis in space, and nanoparticle arrangements in quantum dot solar cells. The SpaceX Dragon is delivering a new set of sensors for the Astrobee robots on board the station that will support automated 3D sensing, mapping, and situational awareness functions. These systems could support future Gateway and lunar surface missions by providing automated maintenance and service scanning using rovers to be launched to the lunar surface as part of the Artemis program. Additionally, the spacecraft will deliver a small satellite called Burst Cube that is designed to study gamma ray bursts that occur when two neutron stars collide. This satellite could help increase our coverage of the gamma ray sky, improving our chances of studying bursts both with light and gravitational waves or ripples in space-time that would be detected by ground-based observatories. Finally, SpaceX, the Dragon cargo craft, is delivering sample hardware for an initiative called GEARS that will test different locations of the space station for antibiotic-resistant microbes. The in-flight gene sequencing could show how these bacteria adapt to the space environment, providing knowledge that informs measures to protect astronauts for future long-duration missions. This is Mission Control Houston. We're just a few minutes away from reacquiring a downlink television signal from the International Space Station. We're in a gap between satellites in our tracking and data relay satellite system at the moment. As was heard on the loops, the mid-course correction burn by Dragon's Draco thrusters was conducted. Essentially a small tweak to fine-tune Dragon's path to the International Space Station. We should be arriving at a point about 1,000 meters directly below the station in some 5 minutes. Dragon's path is spot on for an expected docking to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module at 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. Once Dragon makes contact and capture to the docking mechanism on the zenith port of the Harmony module, a series of 12 hooks will close to form a hard mate between Dragon and the station. An umbilical will be extended to hook up to the station's power system so that Dragon can draw station power for the duration of its 5 weeks, delivering some 3 tons of science equipment and supplies to the expedition crew on board the station. That expedition crew, awaiting the arrival of Dragon this morning, is led by Station Commander Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos, along with his Roscosmos crewmates Nikolai Chub and Alexander Grabenkin, along with NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Laurel O'Hara. Barrett and O'Hara are going to be in the cupola a short time from now to have their tools and monitoring equipment set up so that they can keep a close watch and close tabs on Dragon's approach for its docking to the Harmony module's zenith port. Once leak checks are conducted later this morning, the hatches between the two vehicles, Dragon and the station, will be open, and cargo unloading will commence. That will occupy most of the day on Saturday for the crew members on board the International Space Station. We're about to come AOS, acquisition of signal on our tracking and data relay satellite system. Dragon continues its course toward the complex. Now just 800 meters away from the International Space Station, where it will move to a point directly below the station, then in front of the station, then above the complex, inside the so-called keep-out sphere, to begin its final approach for contact and capture to the Zenith docking port on the space-facing side of the Harmony module. All of the rendezvous burns for Dragon have been on the money. No issues. All of the Dragon systems in great shape, being monitored by SpaceX flight controllers in Hawthorne, California, as well as the team here in Mission Control in Houston. Down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, we are now 2 hours and 24 minutes until the launch of Soyuz MS-25. This photo just received from NASA Chief Photographer Bill Ingalls, showing the crew at the launch pad on the stairs, about to board their vehicle. From top to bottom, Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya, NASA's Tracy Dyson, and at the bottom, Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitsky. The crew is now strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz MS-25. The vehicle, the Soyuz 2.1A booster, is fully fueled. This second launch attempt coming 2 days after the countdown was halted at the T-minus 20-second mark by the automated launch sequencer, when an issue of low voltage was detected in the electrical system of the booster's first stage. The crew was never in any danger at that time on Thursday. They were extracted from the vehicle after the countdown and the launch attempt was scrubbed for the day. They were taken back to their Cosmonaut Hotel crew quarters, where they have brushed up on some training and preparing for today's second launch attempt. Once we complete our SpaceX docking coverage this morning, we will segue at 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time into our launch coverage from Baikonur, with launch scheduled at 7:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. And there's our view of our cargo ship, the SpaceX Dragon, that is currently now 600 meters below the International Space Station, moving into the approach ellipsoid for its looping turn, if you will, around a racetrack pattern called the keep-out sphere. Soon it will reach a point 400 meters directly below the station along the radial vector, or the R-bar. Then in front of the station along the direction of travel of the station, called the velocity vector. Dragon on automated approach will move to a position directly above the station to a point called Waypoint 1 for the final approach and docking to the Zenith, or space-facing port of the Harmony module. The International Space Station is currently flying 262 miles over the border between India and China, about to begin a northwest to southeasterly swing on this orbit of the Earth, in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. SpaceX flight controllers in Hawthorne telling Flight Director Ronak Dave here in Mission Control that Dragon is go to move toward Waypoint 0 and to pass Waypoint 0, which is the point 400 meters directly below the station, and begin its looping turn. That will basically be clockwise if you were looking at a clock, to reach a point directly above the station for final approach. Flying 262 miles over China, the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft about to move into an orbital sunset as it continues its flawless approach for a docking to the International Space Station at about 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. A good view of Dragon, now just 430 meters away from the International Space Station. Inside the approach ellipsoid, about to make its loop to a point some 220 meters directly above the station, with docking scheduled about 55 minutes from now. Dragon has executed all of its rendezvous burns in excellent shape, initially raising its altitude following its launch on Thursday from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station on the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, raising its orbit in a stair-step approach to match that of the International Space Station, and then refining its course toward the station, all the burns automated, and all have been executed in flawless fashion. Once again, a great view of the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft carrying some 3 tons of supplies and science experiments for the Expedition 70 and soon 71 crews on board the station. The 7 crew members on board the complex: Oleg Kononenko, Nikolai Chub, Alexander Grabenkin, Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Laurel O'Hara, are waiting for the arrival of SpaceX. The NASA crew members will be unloading SpaceX cargo later today after the Dragon's hatches open. That will come shortly after leak checks are conducted and the hatches are open between the Dragon and the International Space Station. This is Mission Control Houston. The cargo Dragon is approaching the 220-meter mark away from the International Space Station. As it continues its on-target approach for a docking to the zenith port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. That is scheduled for about 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. You can see the flashing strobe light on the forward portion of the Dragon cargo craft as it continues its approach to a point some 200 meters above the International Space Station. The crew has reported that it has a good visual sighting of Dragon, currently flying in an orbital sunset, about to move off the coast of China and move from northwest to southeast across the Pacific Ocean. This is Mission Control Houston. Again, a view over the northwest Pacific Ocean of the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft as it continues its approach to the International Space Station, about to reach what is called Waypoint 1, a position about 220 meters directly above the station, where it will initiate its final approach for an anticipated docking at about 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time, to the zenith or space-facing port of the station's Harmony module. While Dragon is in the home stretch of its two-day journey from its launch at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida on Thursday to a docking to the station this morning, Down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson, Soyuz commander Oleg Novitsky of Roscosmos, and spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya of Belarus are suited up in their Sokol launch and entry suits, strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft, ready for a second launch attempt today, just 2 hours and 4 minutes from now. The Soyuz 2.1A booster is fully fueled, ready for launch at 7:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. The countdown, once again on Thursday for the initial launch attempt, was halted at the T-minus 20-second mark by the ground launch sequencer at Pad 6, Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, when a low voltage reading was detected in the electrical system of the booster's first stage. Batteries were changed out and retested on Friday, and everything is set to go to send Dyson, Novitsky, and Vasilevskaya on a 2-day journey, a 34-orbit journey, based on the orbital mechanics available today, and a docking to the International Space Station's Prishal module on Monday morning at 10:09 a.m. Central Time, 11:09 a.m. Eastern Time. We will begin our launch coverage from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, following the Dragon docking to the International Space Station.
You're actually connected to air quality monitor power supply 1003, which is connected to switch 3 on the PS120.
And Matt, that's a good feedback on the power.
That air. No, I understand. I'm showing for procedure step 2, serial number 1015, connected to power supply 1002 for the procedure, not 1003.
And Matt, that's a firm. So we'll make sure we correct that.
Okay, well, so 1006, air quality monitor 1006 is running off of serial number 1002. So the power supplies are swapped. So just to say, I want that to be clear, air quality monitor 1006 is connected to 1002, and air quality monitor 1015 is connected to power supply 1003.
Okay, Matt, we copy all and appreciate that info, and we'll make sure our stuff is updated.
Copy. I mean, maybe I'm being way too detailed here. You tell me.
No, Matt, that's good. It helps us keep our products up to date. We appreciate the report.
Okay.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're about 35 minutes or so away from the expected docking of the SpaceX Cargo Dragon to the International Space Station. The expected docking time, approximately 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time. SpaceX and its Dragon craft, with all of the Dragon systems being monitored by SpaceX flight controllers in Hawthorne, California, and the team here in Mission Control at the International Space Station Flight Control Room, also monitoring Dragon's approach and space station systems, and the level of station readiness to accept the Dragon for its docking to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station just about 35 minutes from now. We're about 21 minutes away from the point at which Dragon will be directly above the station at a distance of some 220 meters. That's called Waypoint 1, a brief opportunity for the alignment of Dragon to the Harmony module to be assessed by the SpaceX team in Hawthorne before the command is given to begin final approach to Waypoint 2 and a distance of just 20 meters away from the station, and then the final go for docking, which means contact and capture, initiating the hooks, the 12 hooks that will permanently latch Dragon to the station's Harmony module for the next 5 weeks of its cargo delivery and scientific experiment delivery activity. Dragon and the station are flying from northwest to southeast across the Pacific Ocean at an altitude of about 260 statute miles. We're 1 hour 53 minutes away from the launch of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft with NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson, Roscosmos Soyuz commander Oleg Novitsky, and Marina Vasilevskaya, the spaceflight participant from Belarus. They are aboard their Soyuz spacecraft at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The vehicle is fully fueled. The countdown is proceeding without a hitch toward an expected liftoff time of 7:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:36 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, sending Dyson, Novitsky, and Vasilevskaya on a 34-orbit, 2-day journey to the International Space Station for a docking to the Prishal module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station, docking on Monday, scheduled at 10:09 a.m. Central Time, 11:09 a.m. Eastern Time. When we are complete with our Dragon docking coverage this morning, we'll take a quick pause and then resume our Soyuz launch coverage on this doubleheader day at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on NASA television. A view over the Pacific Ocean of the Dragon cargo craft and its flashing lights visible to the Expedition 70 crew on board the International Space Station. We're about 16 minutes or so away from the Dragon arrival at what is called Waypoint 1. That's a gate post, basically 220 meters directly above the International Space Station. All of the rendezvous burns have been executed without incident. Everything in excellent shape on the Dragon as it closes in for contact and capture to the Harmony module's Zenith docking port. This is Mission Control Houston. If you're just joining us, you're looking at a view in darkness of the flashing lights on the SpaceX Dragon cargo ship launched from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station 2 days ago. Now in the final stages of its approach for a docking to the International Space Station at about 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time, to deliver some 3 tons of supplies and science experiments to the Expedition 70 and soon Expedition 71 crews. We are just a couple of minutes away from Dragon's arrival at what is called Waypoint 1. That is a milestone of about 220 meters in distance above the International Space Station along what is called the R-bar, the radial vector, an imaginary line drawn between the station and the center of the Earth. We're about 26 minutes away from expected docking. Once the docking occurs, a series of hooks, 12 in all, will close in gangs of 6 each. That will form a hard mate between Dragon and the station's Harmony module, setting the stage for leak checks at the docking interface that will be conducted by the station crew members prior to the opening of the hatch between the station and Dragon, and then the Dragon hatch itself later this morning, allowing the crew members to begin unloading the most time-critical cargo and the science equipment that will be set up for about 5 weeks of science data gathering. Meanwhile, down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, countdown clocks also ticking toward the launch of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft 1 hour, 45 minutes from now. That will send NASA's Tracy Dyson Roscosmos Soyuz commander Oleg Novitsky and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya into the beginning of a 2-day journey to reach the International Space Station and a docking to the station's Prishal module on Monday morning. The second launch attempt that's coming up follows a last-second scrub of Thursday's initial launch attempt due to the detection of a low voltage reading in the electrical system of the Soyuz 2.1A booster's electrical system. Batteries in that system were changed out on Friday and retested, and everything is set to go with the vehicle now fully fueled and the crew strapped into their seats in the descent module, the center section of the 3-section Soyuz vehicle. We'll transition out of Dragon docking coverage into Soyuz launch coverage at 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time.
Station Houston on space to ground 2. Houston is go for Dragon to approach to waypoint 2.
Station copies, go.
You heard the voice of spacecraft communicator David Brenna here in Mission Control in Houston, and the acknowledgement by NASA astronaut Laurel O'Hara aboard the International Space Station that Dragon has been given the go from the mission director at Hawthorne, California for SpaceX, and concurred by Flight Director Ronak Dave here in Mission Control to enable Dragon to approach inside the keep-out sphere to a distance of about 20 meters away from the International Space Station. That should be occurring a short time from now. This is Mission Control Houston. The SpaceX Dragon cargo craft now less than 300 meters away from the International Space Station, having given a go for approach to what is called Waypoint 2. That's a intermediary stoppage point, putting the brakes on basically for a final evaluation of its systems at a distance of about 20 meters or so away from the station before the go is given for final approach for contact and capture. We are about to enter into an orbital sunrise for Dragon and the International Space Station over the South Pacific as the two craft will make their way from northwest to southeast, crossing the southern coast of Chile.
EHS, air quality monitor in 6.5 as the user account.
With you on 2, Matt, we copy.
For situational awareness, the expected docking time for Dragon to the Harmony module's Zenith or space-facing docking port will come about 1 hour and 20 minutes before the scheduled launch of Soyuz MS-25 from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, as a flurry of activity is unfolding here in Mission Control in Houston, the SpaceX Control Center in Hawthorne, California, the Russian Mission Control Center on the outskirts of Moscow, and the focus of attention after Dragon this morning at the launch pad with Launch Pad 6, Site 31 of the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. And as we move into an orbital sunrise, a better view now of the strobe lights on the forward portion of the Dragon cargo craft, slowly but surely making its way toward the beginning of its terminal phase of its rendezvous. Everything, all of the burns from the Draco thrusters have been automated and have been executed in excellent fashion. You can see just off to the side of Dragon, that's the open nose cap that was commanded open some 13 minutes after Dragon's launch atop its Falcon 9 rocket from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station on Thursday. The opening of the nose cap exposing the docking mechanism on the forward port of Dragon, as you can see, is closing in on the space station. This view now of the same perspective that Laurel O'Hara and Mike Barrett are seeing on their monitors inside the cupola as they monitor the approach of Dragon in the final moments before docking, which is scheduled some 15 minutes from now. We expect to reach waypoint 1. That's the point of a distance of about 220 meters between Dragon and the station, directly above the station. That's coming up about 10 seconds from now. and Dragon now is passing waypoint 1 into the keep out sphere. Again, there are two imaginary boundaries, if you will. One is the approach ellipsoid. That's a oval-shaped area around the International Space Station. The second, a circular area called the keep-out sphere, essentially the point of the terminal phase of the rendezvous that brings Dragon towards its destination today, the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. And there you see the pre-programmed thruster firings on Dragon as it precisely aligns itself with the Harmony docking port. The Crew 8 Dragon that brought Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Alexander Grabenkin to the station earlier this month is docked to the forward docking port of Harmony. Once the SpaceX Cargo Dragon craft departs the Zenith port to which it's arriving this morning, once it departs that Zenith port about 5 weeks from now, Crew 8 will climb into its Dragon vehicle and do a relocation, undocking from the forward port of Harmony, redocking to this same Zenith port that the Cargo Dragon is going to this morning. That opens up the forward port of Harmony for the arrival in early May of the Boeing Starliner crew commercial craft that will bring on the crew flight test or CFT mission astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams on the first crewed test flight of the new Boeing Starliner vehicle. As we continue to watch Dragon approaching the International Space Station, thruster firings again automatically programmed. As Dragon fine-tunes its path to the station, we're continuing to receive updates from the launch pad at Baikonur. The three Soyuz MS-25 crew members, Tracy Dyson, Oleg Novitsky, and Marina Vasilevskaya, are conducting leak checks on their Sokol launch and entry suits inside the descent module. The Soyuz 2.1A booster fully fueled, ready for launch 1.5 hours from now.
And back with you on 2 Laurel. At waypoint 2, Dragon will briefly pause to align for docking, then automatically resume approach.
Copy, brief pause at waypoint 2.
Laurel O'Hara acknowledging the call from spacecraft communicator David Brenna here in Mission Control. As is planned, the Dragon cargo ship will put the brakes on for just a brief period of station keeping at what is called waypoint 2, a distance of just 20 meters from the docking port on the space-facing side of Harmony. Once those diagnostics are complete, then the go will be given for final approach and docking.
Station Houston on 2 for Matt.
Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Ronak Dave will be polling his team of flight controllers to get a go for approach to waypoint 2. A good view of Dragon, its nose cap open, on automated approach for a docking that is scheduled at about 6:16 a.m. Central Time, 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time, some 9 minutes from now. Flight controllers at Hawthorne, California for SpaceX report the Dragon's systems are now configured for docking. Dragon now on final approach, crossing the 100-meter mark. All of Dragon's systems in excellent shape. A final poll being taken here in Mission Control for a go for docking. All the flight control positions here in Mission Control have pulled go for docking. Dragon now 80 meters away. Once again, the view you're seeing is the same view that Mike Barrett and Laurel O'Hara are privy to in the cupola as they monitor Dragon's final approach for contact and capture that is scheduled about 8 minutes from now, about 5 minutes actually from now. Dragon and the International Space Station now flying some 262 statute miles over the South Atlantic, about to begin a southwest to northeasterly swing that will carry it across the west coast of Africa a short time from now. Now approaching 50 meters. We're in a momentary handover between satellites on the tracking and data relay satellite system. We'll get back the video signal here shortly.
Houston Station on 2 for our pop.
With you on 2, go ahead.
We're seeing on our pop on SSC 16 that we're getting ranges from node 2 forward DP to visiting vehicle DP. The corridor is showing good though.
Laurel, we copy. We're going to have Pluto fix it from here.
Thanks.
Dragon now 30 meters away. Dragon now approaching the final gate called Waypoint 2. Right before docking, you'll hear a call, the CHOP call. That's the acronym for Crew Hands-Off Point, where the crew no longer will have the capability to issue an abort command in the unlikely event a last-second technical issue would crop up.
And Station Houston on 2 for Laurel. We think it'll be faster if you do it yourself, and you can do that by pressing Control F8. You'll have to keep cycling through it until you get what you want.
We are all
Station Houston on Space Ground 2. Dragon is on final approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 5 and 6 and 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
copy go for docking. We're in step 5. We see range at 17 meters. Attitude as expected.
We copy. Good words.
Laurel O'Hara acknowledging a distance of about 17 meters separating Dragon from station. We're about 3 minutes away from contact and capture. You're looking right down the barrel of the zenith or space-facing docking port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station, where the Dragon cargo ship will spend the next 5 weeks. "11 meters away. Dragon very stable, nominal rates reported. Moving inside the 10-meter mark. "7 meters now separating Dragon and the space station. Crew is standing by. "5 meters now. Good orientation by Dragon, very stable. "2 meters away, standing by for contact and capture. Crew is now hands off, no abort commands capable anymore. And we have contact and capture, soft capture complete at 6:19 a.m. Central Time, 7:19 a.m. Eastern Time, as Dragon and the space station flew 262 miles over the South Atlantic just west of Africa. Once again, now we're waiting for relative motion between the two vehicles to dampen out before the initiation of the 12 hooks on Dragon that will form a hard mate between itself and the International Space Station. The docking ring retraction is now in progress. That basically pulls the two vehicles tightly together. Once again, docking occurring at 6:19 a.m. Central Time, 7:19 a.m. Eastern Time, as the International Space Station and the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft flew over the South Atlantic just west of Africa. The Dragon cargo craft completing a textbook two-day journey following its launch on Thursday afternoon from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Two Dragons now at the station. This cargo Dragon at the zenith or space-facing port. The Crew 8 Dragon that brought Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Alexander Grabenkin to the station earlier this month at the forward port of Harmony. We are standing by for the initiation of the hooks on Dragon to begin to close. Two gangs of 6 hooks apiece that will form a hard mate between Dragon and the station. Then an umbilical is extended that provides power between the station and Dragon, so Dragon can draw station power for the duration of its 5-week stay on board. We now have a good alignment between Dragon and the international docking adapter to which Dragon linked up to just a couple of minutes ago. And while we're standing by for the initiation of the hooks to close, just a note, at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, we're 1 hour, 12 minutes away from the launch of Soyuz MS-25. The crew is on board. The vehicle is fully fueled, ready for launch at 7:36 a.m. Central Time, 8:36 a.m. Eastern Time. Launch coverage will begin at the top of the hour on NASA Television and NASA Plus at 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern.
Station Houston, MCS configured, proceeding with hook driving.
Copy.
And that call from spacecraft communicator David Brenna here in Mission Control to Laurel O'Hara indicates that we should be seeing the initiation of the hooks driving on Dragon to form a hard mate between itself and the ISS a short time from now. The first set of hooks now driving. This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, we're waiting for the completion of the driving of the hooks to form a hard mate between the newly arrived Dragon cargo craft, which linked up to the International Space Station's Harmony module, the Zenith or space-facing port, about 10 minutes ago at 6:19 a.m. Central Time, 7:19 a.m. Eastern Time. And we're now hearing that the second set of hooks are now driving and engaging.
Station Houston on space to ground 2, hard capture complete.
And we have a hard mate.
Mission copies, hard capture complete. Congratulations to NASA and SpaceX. It was a beautiful approach and docking from up here. We're looking forward to getting into Dragon and getting going on all the research on board. And also finding all the goodies too.
Hey, thanks so much for the words, Laura. We really appreciate it.
This is Mission Control Houston. You heard the confirmation of hooks closed, forming a hard mate between Dragon and the Harmony module's Zenith International Docking Adapter. So the cargo vehicle carrying 3 tons of supplies and science equipment to the station, now firmly in place. An umbilical is being attached between Dragon and the station so Dragon can receive station power. Meanwhile, at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, you're looking live at the Soyuz MS-25 on the launch pad. It's pad 6, site 31 at the Central Asian Spaceport, as the countdown has passed the T-minus 1 hour 5 minute mark. On board the descent module, encapsulated in the upper stage of the Soyuz booster, are NASA's Tracy Dyson, Roscosmos Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitsky, and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya. They are ready to launch at 7:36 a.m. Central Time, 8:36 a.m. Eastern Time, on a 2-day journey to reach the International Space Station. Our coverage will begin at the top of the hour at 7 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. This is Mission Control Houston. Docking now confirmed and complete with the extension and attachment of the umbilical between the station and the Dragon cargo craft that linked up to the Harmony module at 6:19 a.m. Central Time, 7:19 a.m. Eastern Time. It was a perfect 2-day journey from its launch at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station on Thursday to its arrival on the station today for a 5-week delivery mission. So with that, we'll wrap up our coverage temporarily here from Mission Control. We'll be back on the air in just 27 minutes at the top of the hour with our Soyuz launch coverage, sending another crew to the International Space Station. In the meantime, this is Mission Control Houston.
Space, night, death, darkness, not being there, is an essential component of being. You don't have the one without the other, just as your buzzsaw has no teeth without having that. That's the way being is made up.